This is Groundeffected. My name is your dad, and today I'm going to be painting a Gwen. This model was sculpted by Lucas, and I'm going to leave a link for Lucas's Instagram in the description down below, so make sure to check him out if you want to see more of his work. Also, this video was not sponsored, so make sure to check out my Patreon to make sure I can have lunch. And without any further ado, let's just get straight into painting the Gwen. I wasn't joking when I said I'm going to jump straight in, and for real, I've already primed and cleaned and prepped this model, so I'm jumping straight in. I'm going to paint all of the skin tones with a pinkle color, and I'm going to set them aside because that's for later. I'm not even going to worry about it right now. But what I am going to worry about is giving this base some life, and on this base, I'm going to start out with a brown, which is kind of on the darker side of browns, and I'm going to dry brush that using my wife's makeup brush because these are the best dry brushes in my opinion. I'm going to then take a leather brown, which is a slightly orangish and lighter brown, and I'm going to dry brush that over the top, and after that I'm going to come back with some deck tan to really pick up some of the edges. However, that is going to desaturate things a lot, and in order to bring that color back, I just use a yellowy brown to kind of sparkle over the top. Now, of course, there are some bricks in the background, and I want those to stand out a little bit differently, so I'm going to take a more redder brown, and I'm going to dry brush, more like brush over the top of them with a bit more of a wetter than dry brush. And then I'm going to squirt some Ryklin Flesh Aid into the shadows of those bricks. This is going to help just bring more life and color into those bricks and make it look like I put more effort in than I actually did. Next, I'm going to take some of this panel line wash and I'm going to run it into some of the cracks around the base, on the floor of the base. And to bring some more color back into the piece, I'm going to use Drakenhof Nightshade in certain areas as a shadow, but to add some color. On the base, there are some spray cans, and every single spray can I sprayed with a layer of silver and set them aside to dry for a little bit later. Now, to get back to the body, I'm going to start working on the skin tones, and I'm going to try this a little bit differently, even though it's the same basically, but it's a different color. I do try and use different colors as much as possible, but it's starting to get hard to remember which ones I have and haven't used. So this is one of the colors that I picked off of the shelf and started spraying it. It is a skin type color, and as you can tell, if you use the pinkle method, it doesn't actually really matter too much which skin type you use, because it will look like skin tones anyway. The pinkle method is just the boss method, in my opinion anyway. Obviously, you want to highlight that, and when you do highlight, annoyingly, all the skin tone set colors are so desaturated. So to bring that color back in, Orcish Dermis is the magic color that I use, which helps put the pink back into the pinkle. Now, I also tend to find that these skin tones are a little bit weak and maybe too light, so to give a bit of a tan, what I tend to do is a very thin down layer of yellow over the entire lot of the skin, and this will tie it all together, making it look nice and tanned. Now, to work on the rest of her suit, she is wearing a lovely pink outfit, which is a very difficult color to make if you don't have this color specifically. So make sure you mix up enough of it, because if you don't, you're going to have a bad time. But it's pretty easy and straightforward to paint that onto the body parts that need to be pink. After that, I'm going to mask up the skin tone areas that I had painted because she has a white jaquette, and this is one of the most difficult things you can possibly do, in my opinion anyway, because white is a really difficult color to paint onto things. Whilst I waited for that white to dry, which essentially was just Wraithbone from Citadel, and I sprayed that on everything, I quickly gave a little highlight to her pant area. When I was done with that and the jacket was dried enough, I used a very nice mix of colors to spray into the shadows. I can't explain why, I just didn't want them to be dark, so I ended up using a pinkish, bluish kind of greyish. I don't know how to explain it, so I'm just going to move on to telling you how I painted the spray cans. And for the spray cans, what I did was use some of that panel line wash to give a little bit of the recesses some depth and look like they had been painted a bit more, and then I just printed onto literally sticker paper the labels for these cans, and then I spray painted them with a clear gloss coat, and then I stuck them onto the cans and painted the color on the rims of the tops of the cans, and it looks freaking cool, even if I have to say it myself. Now, to move on from that, after I'd gotten over the fact that those little cans look so awesome, I moved on to painting the Stockings, and that was pretty simple, really. It was just a color painted onto the Stockings. To be honest, this was the easiest part, because now it's time to paint those shoes, and obviously I left quite a bit of white everywhere because the shoes are also white. Why are they white? Anyway, they look really cool when they're painted, so take your time if you're painting something like this, and just really carefully go bit by bit by bit. Obviously, you can come back and cut over the top of these colors using certain other colors. However, they will not match, because it's very difficult to match white, because what you think is white is not actually white. That is my advice for the day. Don't even bother trying to match it. Just make a new patch, color in the whole patch, and don't tell anyone that you made any mess ups. Once I was absolutely satisfied with the little lines and stuff, I then took Griphound Charger Grey, which is a contrast paint, and I carefully lined that in all the seams. I also came back with my airbrush and sprayed that from the bottom, not even caring at all about any of the overspray, because this is in the shadows, and in my opinion it seems to look pretty okay. This means I can put the legs together as well as the hips together and put this portion of the model aside, because I am now done with this. The next steps now will be to paint the awesome logo that is raised nicely on top of a hoodie. Now, of course, if this is indent, you can also paint stuff inside of it and then wipe off the edges. That's one way of doing it. But when it's raised, I prefer that because it's easier to just paint over the top of them using a brush control method and paint the edges, and Bob is in fact going to be your uncle. I also used that same pink to just paint a very thin line around the pocket area of that hoodie, and also the bandana or whatever it is on the top of her head. I'm not actually sure what it is. I've said this before, I don't know fashion. But moving on very swiftly to the hair, I painted this with a base coat of skeleton bone. Really, this color is one of my favorite colors to use for blonde hair types, just because it just seems to do the job so well. It's easy to build up from and build down from as well. I used the darker purplish pink to paint over the letters on the top of a hood thing, and then I poured skeleton horde into my airbrush and squirted that from the shadowed areas, mostly from the back of the hair, but also around the forehead hair. I think that's called the fringe, and in some of the areas as close as I could to the skin. A little bit of overspray here isn't the end of the world, but obviously you want to try and control it as much as you possibly can. I then took Magos Purple and painted her lips as well as the entirety of the inside of her mouth. My thinking here is that when I come back later and paint the teeth individually, I can leave a little bit of the Magos Purple, thus signifying gums, I think. Now, this model has very nice dyed tips to her blonde hair, and so the best way for me to do this is to literally just spray it onto the tips of the hair, because it's going to give a really nice edge to it and it'll look a little bit softer. But I wasn't too happy with the pink that I chose, so I took some Magos Purple to make the tips just a little bit darker, and then move swiftly on to painting the eyes. Now, of course, with the eyes I used the same method that I use for most models, and I painted black over the eyelashes at first. I then came back in with something similar to a deck tan or highlight skin and painted the insides of the sclera of the eye. Now, if you use deck tan, that isn't bright enough, so you might want to mix a little bit of white into that. I also dry brushed some of that skeleton bone back over the hair, even over the areas that I did the pink on, just to reinforce some of it. I took a little bit of Reichland Flesh Shade and painted that into the crevasses of her cheeks to reinforce the depth there as well. I just want to quickly take this moment to tell you that I have a Patreon, and over on my Patreon you get behind the scenes and exclusive access to a lot of the work that I do. If you were a Patreon, you would have known these two videos were coming a long time ago, so check out the description to see if you want to join my Patreon or not. Now, moving swiftly on, I'm going to paint the eyeballs of this lady, and the best way is to paint the darkest color of the iris first to create the shape. a very important thing when painting eyeballs is to make sure that, particularly on female eyes, you want to make them as the irises, that is, as large as possible without being ridiculous, because obviously if it's nice and big, they look nice and happy. If they're small, they look angry, and angry models look scary. After you have shaped that eye and you are happy with how it looks, you can then come in with a brighter color on the inside of that, leaving a small little thin line around that, and then you have now got a nice, very nice iris. You can then take a small amount of black and place that in the center of the iris, and then once that is dried fully, you can take a little bit of white and paint that into the tiniest little corner. I like to put one on the top left and a very small one on the bottom right, and then I take a little bit of a clear gloss and paint it over everything. Make sure it is completely dried before you do this, otherwise you will have a bad time. Also, this particular model was really difficult to put together because of the way the keys were, and I got a little bit frustrated doing this. Even though I cut some of the key off, it still drove me nuts. I was worried about scraping off the paint, but after I'd shoved it together, I called it done. I hope you picked something out of this video that will help you painting your next model, or even I just truly hope it was just something interesting to watch for maybe the last 10 minutes. To be honest, I don't actually know how long this video is because I'm still currently making it, so I'm estimating here. I would like to use this opportunity at the end of the video to thank everyone who supports my channel and watches my videos, but more importantly, an extra thanks goes to those who shares the videos with their grands. The next step would be me thanking all of the Patreons, because without the Patreons I wouldn't be able to keep the lights blinding my eyeballs and making videos every single week. Yes, that's right, every week you get a new video. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and this is a good time for me to tell you that if you didn't like anything you saw, I'm not sure why you lasted this long, but you can probably now fuck off. Everyone will think I'm super cool.